If you open any mainstream history textbook, you are taught that human life expectancy has always moved in a straight upward line. We are told that our ancestors lived short, brutal lives, constantly fighting off disease and starvation, and that modern medicine has finally granted us the longest lifespans in human history.
But if you step outside the modern textbook and look at the actual survival records left behind by the ancient world, a completely different and deeply unsettling pattern emerges. Across multiple, entirely independent civilizations that had absolutely no contact with one another, the official archives tell us that early humans didn't live shorter lives. They lived for centuries.
In the ancient Hebrew texts, figures like Adam, Jared, and Methuselah are recorded as living for over 900 years. Mainstream scholars routinely dismiss this as theological fairy tales or wild exaggerations, but the mystery deepens when you realize the Hebrews weren't the only ones writing these numbers down.
Thousands of miles away, the Sumerian King List, etched permanently onto an ancient clay prism, documents early rulers whose reigns lasted for thousands of years. Early Egyptian papyri and ancient Chinese royal histories similarly detail an era where human beings walked the earth for a millennium, possessing a natural biological resilience that seems completely impossible to us today.
For centuries, we've been told that these ancient numbers are just random folklore invented by superstitious minds. But when modern researchers actually took these independent historical records and plotted the lifespans on a graph, they discovered something chilling.
The numbers aren't random at all. Right after a specific, globally recorded planetary cataclysm, human lifespans across every single culture plummeted at the exact same geometric rate. It looks exactly like what happens to a living organism when its pristine habitat is suddenly poisoned. What if our ancestors weren't exaggerating? What if they were just remembering a world where the very air we breathe was entirely different?
To understand how a human being could physically survive for nearly a millennium, we have to look past the surface of the legends and analyze the precise, unedited data left behind in the ancient archives. For generations, academic institutions have treated the extreme lifespans found in the book of Genesis as literary metaphors. We read about Adam living to 930, his son Seth reaching 912, and Methuselah peaking at 969. And we assume it is ancient hyperbole, meant to signify wisdom or spiritual importance.
But that comforting mainstream dismissal completely falls apart when you look at the broader global historical ledger. The Hebrews were not writing in a vacuum. If you cross the desert into ancient Mesopotamia, you find the Sumerian King List, a highly revered official clay artifact dating back to the Bronze Age. This wasn't a book of poetry. It was a rigid, bureaucratic political record meant to establish the legal legitimacy of the ruling classes. Yet, the scribe, who painstakingly etched those cuneiform symbols into the clay, recorded that the earliest rulers before the Great Deluge held power for staggering lengths of time, far exceeding the boundaries of modern biology.
The exact same anomaly appears in the early dynastic records of Egypt. The ancient historian Manetho, who was commissioned to compile the definitive history of the Egyptian pharaohs, explicitly wrote that the first rulers, the demigods and early kings, enjoyed lifespans that stretched across centuries. If this were merely a local myth, we could easily sweep it under the rug, but we are looking at an identical cross-cultural data point. Ancient Chinese royal genealogies, the sacred texts of Vedic India, and the oral traditions of indigenous tribes across the Americas all share this exact same core memory. There was an era, lost to time, where a human face did not begin to deeply wrinkle until it had seen 3 or 4 centuries of winters.
The immediate argument from modern skeptics is that ancient people simply didn't know how to count. The common explanation offered by mainstream historians is that these early civilizations were calculating time by the cycles of the moon rather than the cycles of the sun. They claim that a year in these ancient texts meant a month. It sounds like a logical, grounded solution to a complicated problem until you actually apply the mathematics to the text.
If you divide the ancient lifespans by 12 to convert the supposed months back into solar years, the entire historical timeline descends into absolute absurdity. For instance, the texts state that Mahalalel fathered his first son when he was 65 years old. If those were months, it means he became a father at just 5.5 years old. Enoch would have fathered his children at the exact same biologically impossible age. Furthermore, these same ancient scribes were master astronomers. The Babylonians, the Egyptians, and the Maya mapped the solar year, the equinoxes, and the precise orbits of the planets with staggering accuracy. To suggest they couldn't tell the difference between a single moon cycle and an entire changing of the seasons is not just academically lazy, it is completely incorrect.
The truth is far more compelling. The ancient scribes knew exactly how to track time, and they were recording exactly what they witnessed. When you look at the baseline data from this pre-cataclysm era, the human organism was operating under a completely different set of biological rules. Diseases of old age, rapid cellular decay, and the slow, agonizing physical deterioration we take for granted today were virtually non-existent.
The historical records present us with an undeniable reality. Early human beings were built on the exact same physical blueprint we possess today, yet they were achieving a level of cellular preservation that modern medicine can only dream of. The question we have to ask isn't whether these ancient records are lying to us. The question is, what changed in the physical makeup of our planet that suddenly caused the human body to start aging at 5 times its original speed?
The answer to what changed doesn't lie in a slow, gradual shift over millions of years. The historical records show that the hammer fell in a single, devastating moment. If you look closely at the genealogies recorded after the Great Global Deluge, you can actually watch the exact moment human biology fractured.
Right after the waters receded, the numbers recorded by the ancient scribes completely stop behaving like fluid, poetic folklore. Instead, they begin to track a brutal, downward mathematical descent. Noah, who belonged to the Old World, managed to live to 950 years, but his son, Shem, who survived the cataclysm but had to live out the rest of his days in the aftermath, saw his lifespan instantly cut short, dying at 600.
In the very next generation, the collapse accelerates. Shem's son, Arphaxadad, drops sharply to 438. A few generations later, Peleg dies at just 239. By the time we reach Abraham, the natural human lifespan has cratered all the way down to 175 years. Within just a few centuries, the average life expectancy of a human being on Earth had crashed by over 80%.
For decades, modern researchers assumed these declining numbers were just arbitrary figures made up by ancient writers to fill space on parchment. But when a team of analytical researchers took these exact post-cataclysm lifespans and plotted them onto a modern data chart, they stumbled upon an undeniable biological reality.
The drop in human lifespans doesn't look like random, invented fiction. When charted out, the numbers follow a mathematically perfect exponential decay curve. It is a highly specific mathematical function that mirrors the exact pattern seen in modern laboratory experiments when a thriving living organism is suddenly removed from its natural habitat and exposed to a highly toxic, radiation-heavy environment.
Human imagination can invent ghost stories and myths, but it cannot accidentally fake the precise mathematical laws of biological degradation. The ancient scribes didn't know what an exponential decay curve was, yet they recorded the numbers with perfect accuracy. The sheer precision of this decay proves that the Great Cataclysm wasn't just a massive flood that temporarily covered the land, it was a massive, permanent environmental restructuring of our planet, one that fundamentally broke the original human blueprint.
To understand the sheer scale of this environmental ruin, we have to look at how the Earth's atmosphere actually functioned before the catastrophe. Modern science operates under the assumption that the air we breathe today, the pressure of our skies, and the sunlight hitting our skin have remained unchanged for millennia. But ancient records, paired with fascinating geological anomalies, suggest that the pre-flood world was entirely different. It was an enclosed, hyperoxygenated greenhouse.
In the oldest accounts of creation, the planet is described as being wrapped in a massive protective layer of moisture high above the clouds, referred to in ancient Hebrew texts as the waters above the firmament. Scientists today call this a hyperbaric vapor canopy. If a thick, uniform layer of water vapor surrounded the upper atmosphere of the early Earth, it would have created a natural global shielding effect that is completely absent from our skies today.
This vapor shield did two extraordinary things that directly affected human biology. First, it acted as a massive planetary filter. The primary driver of human aging at a cellular level is cosmic radiation, the constant invisible bombardment of solar X-rays and ultraviolet waves from deep space that slowly damages our DNA every single day. Under a protective vapor canopy, this harmful radiation was entirely blocked. Early humans were walking through a world with zero cellular radiation damage, allowing their tissues, organs, and bones to repair themselves perfectly year after year without degradation.
Second, this canopy acted like a natural hyperbaric chamber. Because of the weight of the vapor layer pressing down, the atmospheric pressure on the surface of the Earth was nearly double what it is today. We see physical proof of this hyperatmospheric pressure when we look at the fossil record. Amber bubbles trapped from the ancient world reveal that the oxygen content of the early atmosphere was close to 35%, compared to just 21% today.
This hyperoxygenation explains a massive paleontological mystery: how ancient reptiles, insects, and plants grew to such colossal sizes. Dinosaurs with lungs the size of horses could easily oxygenate their massive bodies because the air was so thick and rich. For a human being, living in double the atmospheric pressure with double the oxygen content meant that their blood was permanently saturated with life-giving energy. Wounds healed in hours instead of weeks. Cellular fatigue was almost entirely non-existent.
But then, the cataclysm struck. The ancient texts record that the windows of heaven were opened, describing the total, violent collapse of this atmospheric shield. The vapor layer condensed and crashed down to the surface as torrential rain, permanently emptying the upper atmosphere. Within a matter of days, the Earth's protective armor was gone.
The immediate aftermath was catastrophic for human longevity. The atmospheric pressure plummeted to the thin levels we breathe today, causing a drastic drop in blood oxygenation. Worse, the protective filter was destroyed. For the first time in human history, the surface of the planet was violently flooded with raw, unmitigated solar radiation. The human body was suddenly forced to fight a losing war against environmental stress, genetic mutations, and rapid cellular decay. The air hadn't just cooled, the very chemistry of the planet had permanently soured, and the clock on the human lifespan began to tick 5 times faster.
This brings us directly to the modern day, and to a chilling realization that connects our current reality to this ancient environmental collapse. If you look at the trajectory of modern medical science, we are told that we are on the verge of a longevity revolution. With the advent of gene editing, advanced pharmaceuticals, and clean healthcare, mainstream futurists predict that human lifespans will soon extend into centuries.
But if you look past the optimistic headlines and analyze the cold, hard biological data of the human race, you discover an invisible, unbreakable wall. Despite all our advanced technology, despite eliminating global plagues and providing perfect nutrition, the absolute maximum limit for a human being today is still exactly 120 years.
In all of recorded modern history, out of the tens of billions of humans who have lived and died, only one person has ever definitively made it past this barrier: Jean Calment, who passed away in 1997 at the age of 122. Statistically, modern medicine hasn't actually extended the maximum human lifespan at all. It has simply allowed more people to reach the average baseline. We have cleaned up our modern environment, yet the biological ceiling remains firmly locked in place.
What makes this 120-year limit so haunting is that it is not a random number biological evolution stumbled upon. It is a precise historical coordinate. In the ancient texts, immediately following the collapse of the atmospheric shield and right before the lifespans began their rapid mathematical decay, a specific declaration was recorded. Yet his days shall be 120 years.
The ancient records didn't just predict our modern biological limit, they explained exactly why it exists. Our bodies still possess the vestigial genetic blueprints meant for that ancient hyper-oxygenated, radiation-free world. The potential for a multi-century life is still woven into our DNA, but we are running high-performance software in a fundamentally degraded environment.
Every breath we take in our modern low-pressure atmosphere, and every second our skin is exposed to unmitigated solar radiation, the planet itself is actively wearing us down. The ancient patriarchs weren't a different species, and their records weren't fairy tales. They were simply eyewitnesses to a pristine Earth, leaving behind a warning for a generation that has forgotten what it truly means to live.
The stories of the ancient world are often treated as shadows, myths meant to comfort a primitive people who didn't understand the laws of nature. But when the mathematics of biology align so perfectly with the ink on ancient scrolls, the line between myth and history completely vanishes.
We look at our modern world and see the pinnacle of human health, but the earth beneath our feet remembers a much grander architecture. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden baselines of our forgotten history, subscribe to Ages and Omens. The past isn't as distant as you think, and the evidence is all around us. Thank you for watching.